Hello and welcome back to my channel, Angelia's Hobbies, and today I thought what better video to come at you in 2023 as my first video of 2023 as I get back into this Booktube channel would be my January wrap-up. So I have some fun stats at the beginning. I think they're fun. I love reading stats and looking back at them and seeing my reading habits. So that is what I will start with first for my wrap-up. And I read 14 books in January, and I get my stats from Storygraph, and I will leave my Instagram, Bookstagram, Goodreads, and Storygraph linked below. I am going to try to do Storygraph more this year for sure, but unfortunately I did not use it too much in January, but I definitely am going to try to use it more in February. And the number of pages is 4,530 pages. I had 1 2-star, 1 2.5 star, 4 3 stars, 3 3.5 stars, 3 4 stars, and 2 5 stars. And I read 8 romance, and are you ready for this? 6 fantasy. I am not a fantasy reader whatsoever, but now I'm kind of getting into fantasy, so that's pretty exciting. And all of those fantasy books were from Holly Black. And my 2 most popular authors that I read this month was Devney Perry at 4, Holly Black at 5, and Anna Huang at 2. So I'm not going to go too much in order that I read these books. First, I'm going to talk about the series that I read, and then the standalones that I read, and try to give you my rating, a little bit about them, and just things like that. But since it is 14 books, I'm going to try to kind of not speed through them, but get through them a little bit quicker. And so the first book of the year that I actually started off with was Twisted Games, and that was my favorite book of January. I will tell you that now. I loved that book. Like, it was so good. I definitely want to own that book, and really happy that I decided to continue on with the series since I didn't really love Twisted Love. But if you didn't love Twisted Love that much, I still recommend highly you reading the rest of the series. I have not read Twisted Lies yet, but I will hopefully read it eventually. I haven't been able to get my hands on the audiobook, so I will have to physically read that one, and it is a chunker, but I am very excited for that one as well. But Twisted Game is a princess and a bodyguard romance, and I don't have too much to say except that I absolutely loved it. Age gap, which I love, and I love bodyguard romances and really want to read more of them. So if you have bodyguard romances, definitely leave them in the comments because they are really, really good. And that one, like I said, was my favorite book of January. And then I did also read the next book in this series. So that was Twisted Hate, and that I did rate a little bit lower. I did rate a 4 stars, but that is about Josh and Jules. They have a hate relationship, hate to love, and it actually starts off with like friends to benefits situation. That is how they start hooking up, and it has a 1 bed trope whenever they go on a ski trip. So I really, really loved that as well. It has caretaking. It has really, really great tropes, and I highly recommend that one as well. And like I said, I cannot wait to read Twisted Lies. So next books I will talk about are the Devney Perry books that I read. So I did start the Runaway series. I did not finish it, and I was planning on finishing it in February, but we will see. I'm just kind of over those books. This month has taught me that, like, yes, I can binge series, but I don't like to. So I did try to binge a couple series. The Twisted series, I just needed a break, and I can't find the audiobook for Twisted Lies. And then the Runaway series, I just can't binge series. Like, I'm just not that type of person, and I feel like whenever I do binge them that their ratings get lower. So that is one thing I learned in January. But I did read the first 3 books in the Runaway series. So Runaway Road, Wild Highway, and Quarter Miles. Those are the first 3 books, and it starts off with Runaway Road, where she decides to take a road trip from Boston to California, and her car keeps breaking down in West Virginia, and she meets Brooks, who fixes her car, and ends up falling in love with him and staying in West Virginia. So then from there, her friend Gemma takes it and so on. And I believe it's 6 people. They used to live together in a junkyard in California, and that is how they are all friends. And that's why the car is going back to California. And it's kind of like, I think the author got inspired by the Boxcar Children, and I've also heard it's kind of like the Sisterhood of Traveling Pants, like traveling car, and they pass the car off to each person as it makes its way to California. So I gave book 1 3 stars, book 2 3.5 stars. That is a second chance kind of romance situation on a ranch in Montana. Really enjoyed that one. And then Quarter Miles, that is a Friends to Lovers with Catherine and Cash, and I gave that 3 stars. I usually do really like Friends to Lovers, but for some reason I just didn't connect with that one, so that is why it got 3 stars. And then another Devney Perry that I did read for the Sugar and Spice Book Club was Indigo Ridge, and I gave that one 4 stars. That was probably my most liked Devney Perry book, I believe. I have read, I believe, 5 of her books now, and I haven't gotten a 5-star, but I am very hopeful for a 5-star from that author. And definitely let me know your favorite Devney Perry, because I definitely want to get a 5-star from that author for sure. But Indigo Ridge was another small town, Montana. It was romantic suspense, and Winslow is the new chief of police, and there has been kind of a string of suicides, but she's like, are you sure this is suicides? She starts really looking into it, and she has found a couple of murders in those suicide cases, and so that's kind of the romantic suspense detective kind of part to that. And then she, on her first night in town, she hooks up with Griffin. They both think that they are out-of-towners. Griffin's like, oh, she's probably just going through town. And Winslow also thinks that he is an out-of-towner. So surprisingly, they meet up a few days later, and he is part of the town, and his family is very well known in the town. So that's pretty funny to, not think that they live in town and, oh yeah, this is just a hookup, and then, oh crap, they're actually a pretty important person. They did kind of get into like a friends with benefits situation before they got in a relationship, but I just didn't feel that connected to the relationship, but I still really enjoyed most of it, so that's why I rated it a 4 stars. And then the next books I will talk about are the Holly Black books. I finally did read The Cruel Prince and most of the books in the series except the newest one that came out in January. I just didn't really feel like reading it, and I'm not sure if I actually will because of the reviews I have seen, and I didn't really absolutely fall in love with the series, but it is one that even if you don't love it, you still like think about it. And I definitely think that I would have loved it more if I read it earlier on in my life. But first book is The Cruel Prince, obviously, and this is definitely not a romance-centered book. It has romance in it, but most of them are just good old-fashioned fantasies, and this book starts off with her and her sisters, and then her parents getting their lives taken, and that is a very traumatic way to start a book. It was crazy. And then they get taken to this, her and her sisters get taken to this fae world, and it is really known as a hate to love kind of romance fantasy, but it is very, very low on the romance, and it mainly focuses on Jude and Carden, and let me see my notes here. She really wants to be a knight, and Carden is the son of a high king, and like I said, it's a little bit of a start of a hate to romance, but it does have a lot of politics, and I don't want to get into the other books too much, but I did read The Wicked King and also The Queen of Nothing. And I rated The Cruel Prince 3 stars, Wicked King 3 stars, The Queen of Nothing 3.5 stars. That was definitely my favorite book of the series, but I did really enjoy the series. I just didn't love them as much as everybody else, unfortunately. And then I did read the 2 novellas. I read The Lost Sisters, which I gave 2.5 stars, and then I read How the King of Elfman Learned to Hate Stories, which I gave 2 stars. So I think that is all the series that I have to talk about. So I will go ahead and talk about the standalones. And they may be series one day, I'm not sure, but most of these are pretty much standalones. So I went ahead and read another book from Kandi Stiener's backlist. I want to try to read her whole backlist in January, so I really hope that I will be able to do that. But I did go ahead and start out with another football romance of hers, and it is The Right Player. And I believe I gave that 4 stars, and it is a reverse age gap book, which not a lot of those, that I have not read a lot of those, so I really enjoyed that. And it's about Belle, and she used to only go on dates. She had like a 3-date rule. She would only go on 3 dates with people, and she never got emotionally attached. She would just do hookups, and then Makoa, he is a football player, and she absolutely hates football players, and he kind of keeps that a little bit of a secret because he wants women to love him for who he is. So he kind of keeps that a little bit of a secret from her. So that is definitely part of the book. And she never wanted to date a football player. She didn't like football players until she met Makoa. And I really liked the reverse age gap, and he had also a 3-date rule, but it wasn't that it was definitely different than her 3-date rule. His 3-date rule was that he was not going to hook up with a girl until after 3 dates. So their rules kind of canceled out each other and kind of didn't work with each other, but he really got her to go on dates with, like, actual dates with him, and I really, really enjoyed it. I really like Kandi Stiener, and I love her sports romances. And then another 5-star of the month and another favorite of the month that I absolutely loved was Icebreaker by Hannah Grace. And this was a definite surprise for me. I was not expecting to love this as much as I did. I heard that it was a slow burn. I saw how big the book is, and I just heard a lot of mixed reviews on it, but my library ended up getting the audiobook, and I said, okay, how about I just go ahead and give this a try? And I absolutely loved it. Loved it. And like I said, it was a total surprise. I was not expecting to love it as much as I did. And this is about Anastasia, and she is a competitive figure skater, and Nathan, who is a hockey captain, and they end up in a forced proximity moment because they end up having to share ice rinks and basically switch back and forth, have it switch back and forth between the hockey players and the figure skaters. And it kind of starts off, it's kind of like a frenemies with benefits, and I wouldn't say it's that much of a slow burn at all. And it's very spicy, very good, and I highly recommend it. If you have not read it yet, definitely read it very soon before winter is over. And then they have to share the rink, and they definitely find themselves in the same place a lot and really running into each other a lot at parties and everywhere in school. And with that forced proximity brings, them closer together, and they end up kind of becoming like frenemies with benefits who fall in love. And then my last book of January was another total shocker surprise, and I read it for the Buzzwordathon, and I really want to try to do the Buzzwordathon all 12 months of this year. And the buzzword was life or death, and I picked up a totally unexpected book for me, and I actually ended up reading The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, and I gave that 4 stars, and I really enjoyed it. Like I said, I was not expecting to enjoy it at all. So I gave it 3 stars, so I might bump it up to like a 3.5. Anyway, a lot of people have already read this book, and I'm definitely behind on it, but if you have not read it, I really, really liked it, and I believe it's on Kindle Unlimited. I did get the audio from my library, And Addie LaRue, she is cursed to be forgotten by literally everybody, and it switches timelines from whenever she was cursed to 2014, whenever she finally finds somebody named Henry who remembers her and she was trying to steal from his bookshop, and that is just something that she did just to survive and get by, and she stole, and nobody remembered her stealing, so she didn't think it was wrong, and she could literally steal something and somebody would forget her as soon as she left the store. And she runs into Henry, who finally remembers her, and it is about, like I said, whenever she first got cursed and how she kind of dealt with that, and then whenever the 2014 timeline, whenever she met Henry. It is a very beautiful story. I probably didn't understand, how beautiful it was because I'm not here for the writing. With most books, I do not care about how beautiful the writing is, but I did think it was a very beautiful, wonderful book, and I do recommend it. And another book that I'm so surprised that I like, and I'm really happy that I tried some books that I'm just really happy that I tried some books that I didn't think I would love, and I ended up really enjoying them. So that is definitely something I want to continue in 2023, is trying to read books out of my comfort zone every once in a while. But I also want to read more of my own books, and that is one thing whenever I did look into my stats, none of these books I owned, so that will definitely be more of a goal in February to read more books that I own on my Kindle and on my bookshelves. And yeah, let me know what your favorite book of January was. Like I said, my top 2 favorite books of January were definitely Twisted Games and Icebreaker. I knew a fantasy wasn't going to be my top book. I knew romance would be, but very surprised with the amount of fantasy that I read, and surprised by my top favorites as well. So go ahead and read and leave a snowflake emoji in the comments, because it still is definitely very snowy and cold where I am, and that is perfect for a January wrap-up, I think. So if you like this video, definitely like and subscribe, and I will see you in my next one. Thank you. Bye.